In general, usually people ask me why I voted for Trump, and it usually goes down the route of immigration. I was born in Mexico.
I think I would have figured that out based on the name.
Yeah, I mean, immigration is like the biggest topic for me. I was born in Mexico, and I have family that has tried to come illegally, and I have family that was taken by the CTEL while trying to cross illegally. So I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's just a losing situation, whether it's trying to cross and risking your life, or being here in the U.S. living under the radar and then possibly being deported. It's just terrible.
Mm. Okay.
Would you agree though that like it's terrible to be in the country illegally and having to do all that stuff?
Having to do all of what?
Crossing the border, hiring coyotes, risking your life, and then coming here living under the radar, and then
Like
being
it's
afraid of deportation,
like it's
having no benefits.
Are you asking me like if it's terrible that you have to, as opposed to like being able to do the whole process like legally?
No, just in general, is it terrible to be, having to cross illegally and living in the country illegally? Do you think it's bad?
The word that's really throwing me off is having to. Are you like so? It sounds like you're asking me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're asking me like, is it bad that that's like some people's only option?
No, that wasn't really the question, although it is some people's only option. I'm just saying in general, do you think it is bad that people are living in the country illegally and having to risk their life to come here and live illegally?
Well, no, and you kind of just hit on why. Like in the case of for some people, it being their like literal like only option, it's like this, or you're probably gonna end up dying or starving to death with your family. Then no, there's aspects of it that are definitely bad.
Right. I agree that it could be their only option, but just because it's their only option doesn't make it okay or good that it's happening to them. Like for example, if I'm starving, I can go, steal for food. That doesn't mean it's okay or that I should be stealing for food. I shouldn't have to steal for food in the first place.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. I just was confused on what it was you were asking. If you're asking about like the morality of the action itself or the morality of the system that created the motivation to do the action.
I just feel like there's a tendency on the left to
Almost done.
excuse or be okay with people living illegally when we shouldn't be okay with people having to live under the radar, getting no benefits while still being taxed, still
I mean,
putting money into the system and not being able to see
yeah,
anything back.
I would probably, at least on this topic, I don't know where else you were going to want to go, but on this topic, I think we'd probably be pretty close to in full agreement. Yeah, I think it shouldn't be that way. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So then we go into what Trump is doing to solve that issue. So we can agree that we should stop illegal immigration. We can agree that we should probably make it easier to come legally and take away the incentive to come illegally.
Mm-hmm.
But then what is Trump doing to fix that? So on day one, he declared a national emergency at the border. He sent the military down there. He's combating the CTELs and the organized crime down there, which is what's affecting the migrants over there, even when they're on the Mexican side. He's obviously helping people that are already here illegally, giving them a flight back, $1,000, and a chance to come back legally instead of being permanently banned. You say he's violating the Constitution. I'm assuming that has to do with the deportations.
Some of that is deportation related, sure.
Right, and I've heard that argument a lot, like the whole deporting people without getting to see a judge or like quote unquote no due process. But people
No.
need to realize that he's using expedited removal, like that
Yeah,
was
no, that wouldn't be my argument. I would be careful. I would be careful, like trying to put. I'm sure you've had this discussion with a lot of other creators or a lot of other people doing lives. I would be very careful trying to insert their arguments into my mouth because that's not. I wouldn't make those arguments.
So what would you say? How would he be violating the Constitution with his deportation?
So a lot of people have a fundamental misunderstanding of what due process is in the immigration context. So that's why you get stuff like that where you're trying to preempt by saying like, oh, the argument of them not seeing judges, right? A person not seeing judges or a person not getting the chance to see a judge in a lot of ways has nothing to do with due process. I kind of cut you off, but you were going to bring up expedited removal. Yeah, under expedited removal procedures, you don't have to. There's no requirement that you do see a judge before you're removed. The problem would be the usage of expedited removal is limited in its use. It can be used at the border, or it can be used within a couple hundred or like 100 miles of the border if the person has arrived within the last shit. I don't know what the exact number is off the top of my head, like a couple of months.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, so generally, expedited removal is pretty. What would the correct word be? It's pretty broad in terms of powers given. Like you can do a lot of things. 14 days. Okay, I got to reread my fucking expedited removal notes.
Yeah, right
Most
now
people
Trump
don't know enough about immigration law to even bring up expedited removal. So you're already ahead of the curve on that.
Right. So people will say, "Oh, Trump's deporting people without, getting to see a judge. That's a violation of due process." And I hear that a lot. But like you said, expedited removal was used at the border within, a small amount of time. Trump expanded that now to being nationwide in the last 2 years. So if you're here in the U.S., anywhere in the U.S. in the last 2 years, illegally, you can be deported without seeing a judge.
Yeah. So then that would be. So then you're. I appreciate you because you know enough to where we can actually have a real convo. That's nice. That's rare on here.
Right.
so the deportation powers, like the the methods that is given, that is, provided to the executive to deport people or allow people in, goes both ways, is set by Congress, right? Trump can't just come along and change congressional statute, right? The rules governing expedited removal can't just be changed at the whim of a pen stroke by the president, right? So if it is the case, and it is, that expedited removal, in terms of people at the border, it can be used on everyone, but in terms of inside the country, you have a range limit, and then you have a time limit, right? It's like 2 weeks, and then within like 100-ish miles, it could be a little less, could be a little more, I don't remember off the top of my head, but the president can't just come along and write an executive order and say, like, okay, actually expedited removal applies to people in Ohio that have been here for 10 years now, like it applies to everyone. Not how that should work. So if you want to unironically kind of just walked yourself into my position of, but the difference is you don't think that that's bad, but I do think that's bad, because the president doesn't get the ability to just change congressional statute.
Okay, so I'm starting to see your argument now. I'm starting to see that you think that he doesn't have the power to expand expedited removal. And I appreciate you, the fact that you're understanding as well, because some people will just scream at me, no, he's not giving them due process, blah blah blah. But
it's because that only happens because most people don't actually know what due process is when it comes to immigration. So that's
right, like some people don't realize that immigrants don't get rights to a representation and things like that, like free representation. But the reason Trump,
to be clear, I don't want to be pedantic, but I take like I think it's important that people know how like the Constitution actually works, and that how our laws actually works, how our laws actually work. The reason that immigrants don't get the right to attorney isn't necessarily because it's not because they're immigrants. It's because of the type of case they're involved in. Like, deportation proceedings are a civil case. Nobody gets the right to an attorney in a civil case, not even citizens. Like, if someone sues me, if the government were to sue me in civil court, I don't have the right to an attorney either in that case. But on the contrary, if the FBI were to arrest and charge an undocumented immigrant with, say, homicide, then they would have the right to an attorney. So it actually, having the right to an attorney versus not having the right to an attorney doesn't have anything to do with your immigration status. It has everything to do with the type of charge levied against you.
Exactly, and that was just an example as to what some people may think is part of due process.
Yeah, but it's not.
That doesn't happen in immigration court. Exactly.
Sure. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So Trump was able to expand expedited removal with his executive order, and it's because it grants the executive branch discretion to designate which aliens are subject to expedited removal. So like they're able to do this. It allows the Attorney General to delegate to DHS who is able to be removed and who is not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it is legal the way he did. He was able to expand it. It was power invested in him as in the executive branch.
Let's see if we can at least get on the same page about something, right? Because I feel like this one's pretty easy. Would you say that the way in which he used that Alien Enemies Act in early March or in mid-March, would you say that those deportations were legal?
Were legal, yeah. The first 249, yeah. I mean, you can say the judge said in the is it an injunction?
Yeah.
When the planes were technically, they're saying the planes were technically still on the ground and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was legal, but then once obviously the judge said in the injunction and the Supreme Court, I think he obviously had to stop doing it, right? He was only able to send 249 people, I think.
Something in that, it was in the mid 200s, yeah. So can you explain to me like why you think it was legal? Because I think this one to me is probably the most clear cut case of illegal deportations I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a legal process, right? So he was able to enact the Enemies Act. Once he did it, he was able to deport those people, and then obviously the judge can then go after that and stop the Enemies Act from being used. But I think we've seen now that a state judge can't issue a nationwide injunction, correct?
I mean, we got a Supreme Court case on this later, but it doesn't. That coming down the line, so like that case, that the nationwide injunction case, right, coming down the line from the Supreme Court, now doesn't like invalidate everything that happened before it.
No, you're right. I'm just saying in general, though. Like now we know that a state judge can't issue a nationwide injunction. Like a low-level judge can't stop something from going nationwide.
You're kind of right and kind of wrong. In this case, if that decision had already been in place at the time, right, the nationwide injunctions case, had that case already happened, I think this still would have gone down the exact same way, because the Supreme Court left like a pretty big. The Supreme Court left the ability to certify classes in that decision. So in this case, it was Judge Boasberg. My guess would have been, and actually, I don't have to guess because he did this. He eventually got to this point where he would have just certified a class of the people that were targeted by the Alien Enemies Act. So everything people try to use the nationwide injunctions case as like a get out of jail free card of like, oh well, look, the Supreme Court said nationwide injunctions like this are unconstitutional, but they left the ability to just certify a class and then enjoin behavior as pertaining to that class of people, which the judge in the case we're talking, the judge in JGG versus Trump, he eventually did that. He just needed more time. I think he did it like a couple days later. This would have played out exactly the same whether that nationwide injunctions case had already happened or not, I think.
I mean, yeah, it probably would have, because Trump was deporting people without like notifying them they were going to be deported.
Sure.
And at the end,
Actually, there you go. You landed on it. So I wanted to ask you to refine what you were saying. So you said that you see these deportations, this first batch of people, you saw that as being legal,
right?
But even the Supreme Court doesn't see it that way. So I'm confused how you got there.
Well, because the Supreme Court later went ahead and told Trump, hey, if you're going to be deporting these people, they have to have at least habeas corpus. So I think once the Supreme Court then told him what he has to do, because they didn't even rule on whether it was constitutional or not. They didn't say, hey, you can't use the Enemies Act. They said, if you're using this, you have to let them know they're going to be deported. Trump obviously didn't like that. He doesn't think we should be letting people know, or criminals know, that we're going after them. And I agree with that. I don't think we should be warning people that we're going to go after them. That just allows them to hide.
Yeah, this is an issue I feel like I have with like every Trump supporter I talk to. I don't know why this is the case, but can you agree that just because if the Supreme Court doesn't use the words "this is unconstitutional," then that doesn't necessarily mean that the action wasn't unconstitutional?
Sure, but I mean, I think they didn't rule. I think we can agree they didn't rule at all on whether it was constitutional or not, right?
Well, in JGG, they weren't even technically ruling on like the actions at all. They were just ruling on where you'd have to file. But let me pose this question to you, right? If it is the case that they're saying, we talked at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about like what actually is due process in terms of like immigration proceedings, right? If what the Supreme Court is ultimately saying in this ruling in JGG is that the minimum standard for due process, as it relates to say like the Alien Enemies Act. I mean, that's the literal example we're going off of here. The minimum standard for due process is allowing the people you're trying to target to file habeas petitions. That's the minimum. And then we also know that Trump didn't do that. Like he didn't allow for them to file habeas petitions. Isn't what they're truly saying like you violated due process with these actions? Because this is our minimum. You didn't meet the minimum, so you didn't give them due process.
No, I think that's why the ruling is important, is because they determine, the Supreme Court is the one that interprets what needs to be done. So if it hasn't been interpreted what needs to be done, you can't really punish someone for not doing it. Do you see what I'm saying? So before the law exists,
I would agree with you. I would really agree with you. I would. The problem is this has already been like we've been here before. We've done this dance previously in 1945. So if it was the case that there was like a novel legal scenario that had never been ruled upon before, like in the history of the country, like it's like, holy shit, we actually don't even know what to do here because we've never been in this position before. This is brand new for us. Then I would actually I would be very amenable to your argument of like, well, how can we really be super pissed at the guy for doing something that's never been ruled on ever? But it has been. We have Bridges v. Wixon from 45, basically like laying out like, hey, if a person now, again, this Bridges v. Wixon is actually very similar to JGG versus Trump in the sense that it was the actual focus of the case was about something different, but we got a standard from it. So just like JGG was technically not about like it wasn't about due process at all. It was about like where people have to file, because it was the reason this case even got to SCOTUS to begin with was the government appealing it, saying, hey, these people can't file in fucking DC. They have to file where they were being detained, which was Texas. So we weren't even talking about due process when it got to the Supreme Court, but we still got a standard from SCOTUS when it got there, them saying like, you have to let them file habeas petitions. Bridges was very similar in that what they were actually discussing in that case, or what was being litigated, was whether or not SCOTUS had the power to declare that World War II was over. And like, SCOTUS obviously was like, no, of course we don't. Like, it's not our job to tell you that, the fucking war is done. But what we get out of that case is a lot of like standards in terms of like, hey, although you normally you would have to let this guy, even though the war is still ongoing and it's not our place to say that it isn't, you still have to let this guy challenge whether or not he even is an alien enemy. And this is an Alien Enemies Act case from fucking almost like 60 years ago plus. So to say we can't blame him because this has never been litigated before, no, it has. A long time ago. It has been plenty of times, actually. The Alien Enemies Act has been used multiple other times in history. 3, right? Yeah. War of 1812, World War I, and World War II, right? Yeah, I think so. So I would agree with you, but I don't, because the factual basis you're going off of is wrong. Anyway, I'll let you go.
Not my bad. I was muted.
No, you're good.
No, and I would agree with you if the Supreme Court was saying, or if Trump was actually not giving them the chance to do habeas corpus at all. Trump just wasn't notifying them of their upcoming deportation. So, like, even the 249 people that were deported without being notified, some of them were able to file habeas corpus still. So that's why I would disagree. Like, Trump didn't stop them from filing habeas corpus. He just didn't notify them or give them enough time to do it. They're saying you need to give them time. Notify them, give them time to file it, and then you can deport them. Trump was obviously doing it just way too quick. So
that's been this is another scenario where that has been due process precedent for decades, probably centuries in the country. That if there's no difference at all between like allowing someone to have the right but not giving them the chance to exert the right, and then not giving them the right at all. Those are basically the same thing. Like if I have due process rights, but you throw me in prison, like you sentence me and throw me in prison after like 4 hours of being arrested. Let's say like the FBI kicks my door in and arrests me for something, and my trial, my sentencing, and my being thrown in prison all happen within like 30 minutes. Like you could say, well, you had due process, like you had the chance to hire a lawyer and defend yourself against this, but no, I didn't. Like I never really actually had the chance to do any of it. So the difference between that and then not having due process rights at all are basically zero. But this has been court precedent for decades in this country. So again, I run into the same scenario where I say I would agree with you if we didn't already have rulings on this. Like Trump should have already known. And well, okay, Trump shouldn't have. Like I don't expect Trump to know anything really, but I do expect the people around him, his office of legal counsel, for instance, his attorney general, for instance, I expect these people to be well aware of these, like of this court precedent, right? To know like, okay, so for due process, we have to at least give them the chance to exercise the rights that they have. And we have Bridges v. Wicks, and so we already know that they should have the ability to challenge whether or not they even are an alien enemy. So I don't give, like, it feels like you're making excuses for the guy, excuses that I refuse to make, because we already have precedent on all of these individual issues, and that this should have been known.
No, again, it's all just a legal battle, dude. Because in the end, like you said, well, yeah, just because you deport someone, like you can deport someone quicker, that's still taking away their right to file habeas corpus, right? That's what you're saying. Like it's pretty much the same thing as taking the right away if they're not able to use it because you deported them so quick. But in the Enemies Act, it literally allows for rapid deportation to bypass lengthy immigration hearings. Like that's the whole point
True.
of the Enemies Act, is to deport them quickly. So like Trump is just doing it legally.
That's the point of
He's
the
skirting-
legislation. The problem
Yeah,
is
he's
that
skirting
legislation.
really close.
The
I
problem
can
is
agree with you. He's
legislation
skirting really close.
legislation can't be in violation of the Constitution, though. That's the problem. Like
Right,
like Congress could pass a law right now that says like if you say the word fluffy, you have a mandatory 20-year prison sentence. But that law is unconstitutional on its face, so we it doesn't matter that law got passed. It doesn't mean anything. Just like
I mean, I agree.
You could pass a law that says immigrants can now be detained and deported inside
so
of 5
now
minutes, but it doesn't matter. That's unconstitutional.
So is your argument now that the Alien Enemies Act is just unconstitutional in general?
No, not on it. It's not facially unconstitutional. In fact, we already have court precedent on
then
this
I don't
topic
get
too.
it.
So do you agree that there can be a law on the books that the law is facially constitutional, but then you use it in an unconstitutional way?
Yeah, it happens all the time.
So that's what I'm saying. So I'm saying it's facially constitutional. Like the way it's written, there's nothing in there that's like inherently, we have to overturn this law because it's on its face unconstitutional. But you can use it in an unconstitutional way, and Trump did.
Right, of course, but Trump didn't use it in an unconstitutional way because they were still able to file habeas corpus. They were just deported rapidly, just like the Enemies Act allowed for.
The filings came as the people were, for one, they had to file before like anything had been done to them, because I think they got what it was that they ended up having insider info, right? Someone probably leaked it from ICE that this was about to go down, because they filed before anything had happened to any of these people. So my guess would be we had some.
No, some of them filed while they were being deported, usually with a representative.
But again, okay, so that's even more. So due process has to be given before the deprivation occurs. Would you agree with that?
No, habeas corpus is literally the argument that you're being falsely detained. So I would argue you have to be falsely detained to then argue you were being falsely detained.
But detainment and deportation are two different things, right?
Right.
Okay, so we're still on the same page.
Hold on, but what's habeas corpus? An argument of deportation or argument of false imprisonment?
False imprisonment.
Exactly.
Okay, but so we're still on the same page right now. Like, it sounds
right.
like, it sounds like you think we're having a disagreement.
It's literally just a legal battle, bro. Like Trump obviously knows what he's doing. He's skirting really close to what he can do legally. Except he's smart. He's staying on the legal boundaries. He's not going to do something that would fuck him over completely. He's smarter than people give him credit for. And I think you get that because you're very smart. So you know that what he's doing is still technically legal. He's just, you can make arguments against it. I mean, you are making valid arguments, but it's not.
My argument would boil down to, if you do something that hasn't had direct one-to-one precedent yet set in the courts, like nobody's ever done this exact thing before, right? But there's tertiary precedent on all of the minute factors, i.e., in this case, like whether or not you have to give people time to exercise their rights, or whether or not you have to let someone challenge whether or not they really are an alien enemy under the Alien Enemies Act. So we have like precedent on all these tertiary things, but we don't have a one-to-one precedent on this exact usage of the Alien Enemies Act. My argument would be, if we have all that tertiary precedent, you should know, especially the lawyers in the White House. Now, Trump is, if you want to make an individualized argument on Trump and say, well, he wouldn't have been expected to know, maybe we'll have that talk. But at a bare minimum, the lawyers in the White House, the Office of Legal Counsel, Pam Bondi herself, basically the entire Justice Department, they should know. They should be able to connect this tertiary precedent and be like, oh, you're not going to, like, this is going to be unconstitutional for like these reasons. And then those exact reasons, the exact reasons I lay out. Now, maybe this is a hindsight issue where it's like, well, of course you're going to say that because we already have the case from SCOTUS. But I mean, you can go back and watch my content from before JGG versus Trump, the Supreme Court case, where I was saying the exact same things I'm saying now. You should be able to piece this together as a Pam Bondi type or as an Office of Legal Counsel. You should be able to put this together and say like, hey, what you're about to do is going to be unconstitutional. This is definitely not allowed. And yeah, he did. So either his lawyers failed him or he didn't listen to them. Maybe they did tell him. That would be even worse. Would you agree that if they did tell him like, hey, this is probably going to be ruled unconstitutional, I don't think you're allowed to do this, and then he went ahead with it anyway, would you agree that's worse than if they failed him and just never told him?
Yeah, but I think you're smart enough to agree that Trump has, a lot of lawyers around him that are very smart, and they're obviously helping and aiding him. So it's not, even if you think Trump is dumb himself, he's obviously surrounded by people that are very smart and are helping him do this. So everything that he's doing is fully legal. I mean, if Trump, that's why he's completely fine with being challenged in the Supreme Court. I mean, you can see that the Supreme Court has so far ruled in his favor almost every single time. You can argue that it somewhat not, because you're like, they're telling him what to do and what not to do, but that's what the Supreme Court does.
I would love to interrogate that. The Supreme Court has ruled in his favor almost every single time. Can we get some examples of them ruling in his favor?
Yeah, so it's like the Enemies Act. They allowed him to continue the Enemies Act. They just told him, hey, you have to give him habeas corpus. That's it.
Would you say that's ruling in his favor, though? If they're saying,
I would say
they're saying what you did was unconstitutional. You can't do it like that. You have to do it like this.
I think that's fine. That's not ruling against him at all. I think that's telling him what to do legally, how to stay within the legal bounds of what he wants.
You would say that what the situation we just described is more fits more into the category of ruling in his favor versus ruling in the plaintiff's favor. The plaintiff is literally asking. The plaintiff is literally asking for what you just described. They're literally saying, "Hey, you've got to tell this fucking guy that he can't do it like this." And then the Supreme Court says, "Yes, we agree. You can't do it like this." And you're saying that's more akin to them ruling in Trump's favor versus the plaintiff's favor.
That's a ruling. That's a ruling. No, that's a ruling clarifying what Trump's able to do and not able to do.
Which is what the plaintiff was asking for, correct?
I know, yeah, but a ruling against him would be them stopping and saying, "Hey, this is unconstitutional to do the Enemies Act. You can't enact it." Or, for example, birthright citizenship, when they said, "Hey, a judge can't do a nationwide injunction," that's also ruling in his favor, is it not?
Sure. Here's how I would describe this, right? So a lot of the times, one of the big criticisms that the Supreme Court has been getting, and I would agree with this criticism, is that they have an issue where they very recently, especially, they've been doing a lot of not answering the primary question at hand, where they're answering like little side questions, right? Like in the case of JGD versus Trump, they didn't actually answer whether or not like the usage of the Alien Enemies Act was constitutional at all. They just answered whether or not, or like how, if you were to use it, how you'd have to use it. Yep. So they've been getting that criticism a lot. And I would say when that happens, when it's the case that they're not answering the primary question, what you have to do is you have to look at what both sides wants, and then you have to look at the ruling and see which side it more leans to, right? In the JGG case, I don't want to be like insulting. I feel like it's literal delusion for you to think that that wasn't a case of them ruling on the plaintiff's in the plaintiff's favor. The plaintiff was literally asking for exactly what was ended up being handed down, and you think that was in Trump's favor. You have the plaintiff over here, the ACLU, saying like, "Hey, we need you to tell him he cannot do it like this. This is clearly illegal." And then the Supreme Court said, "Yes, we agree. Clearly illegal. Trump, you can't do it like that." And you're like, "Yeah, that's them ruling in Trump's favor, not the plaintiff." How? They gave the plaintiff exactly what they wanted.
Because again, I clarified that just because someone is given habeas corpus, I don't think that's completely stopping Trump's agenda or what Trump wanted to do. I'm
not saying it is. I'm not saying it is. Right. You're missing. You're missing the forest of the trees.
No, I get that you're saying they sided with the plaintiff and did what the plaintiff wanted, but I'm saying that ruling in itself didn't necessarily stop anything Trump wanted to do. Trump still enacted.
I'm not saying it is stopping him. I'm saying when we ask the question, who is the Supreme Court ruling in favor of here? There are only two options. It's either plaintiff or defendant. And if they give one side exactly what they asked for, then they clearly ruled on one side, correct?
Sure, you can argue that they sided with the plaintiff on that one, but my argument is that ruling in itself, that whole thing wasn't in order to stop Donald Trump from doing what he needed to do. That wasn't for again, if it was a ruling on whether it was constitutional or not, that'd be something that if they ruled sided with the plaintiff, that'd be against Trump.
I mean, do you know why Trump hasn't used? Do you know why Trump hasn't used the Alien Enemies Act since that first time?
No, I haven't.
Because there's currently 3 different injunctions in 3 different jurisdictions saying that the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act at all was unconstitutional. None of them have made it to the Supreme Court yet because they're slow. The government's slow rolling the appeals.
Yeah.
So
I
to
mean,
say, like, yeah, the Supreme Court didn't answer that question right then and there because it's probably a very uncomfortable position to put them in. You're putting them in a position where they have to rule against like the primary thing that the guy that they support, is wanting to do. But now you have the government themselves slow rolling the appeals, right? So that kind of gives you a little bit of hint. It's not a definitive answer, but it's like it to me that looks a certain way. You're like, well, if you think you're so correct, why aren't you like begging to get this in front of SCOTUS right now?
for me, it's also like the opposite though. It's like, I mean, if you really think that it's that terrible, why doesn't SCOTUS care?
It's not that they don't care; it's that it has this question. They can again. I try to point this out. They're supposed to now. Again, they've been getting a lot of heat recently because they keep violating this principle. But really, they are only supposed to answer the direct question in front of them. That's why in JGG they didn't actually rule on the constitutionality of using the act because that wasn't the question posed. Again, the reason that case got in front of them was because the government, the Trump administration, appealed to them to say, hey, the plaintiffs filed this in DC. They shouldn't be able to do that. And the Supreme Court answered that question and only that question.
Right.
So they didn't
And
have
that's
the
what
chance
like
to answer on the
I'm saying.
constitutionality. But if the Trump administration believes so heavily that their usage of the act at all was constitutional, then why not appeal from where it's sitting in district court right now? Or I think the last place we have circuit court opinions on this now. Why not appeal up to SCOTUS? They probably could. Now I think SCOTUS is on like fucking recess right now, so they can't at this exact particular moment. But like I would be if I was trying to do something and there was a circuit court, or at this point I think 3 different circuit courts blocking it, and I really believed I was in the right, I would be begging the Supreme Court to take a look. But they're not. They didn't even ask yet, I don't think, which is really weird, don't you think?
I'm not sure if they have asked it or not. I did see them asking about the birthright citizenship one.
Oh yeah, they're gonna push that one all the way in. Yeah, I think
And
so.
that's the one I was going to bring up because I'm like, that's another one where it's like they didn't really decide whether it was unconstitutional or not. They just
Yeah, well,
decided
that wasn't the question. Yeah, the question that they were asked wasn't. I think you did have like Sotomayor in the dissent saying like, why don't we just answer the fucking question right now? We're already here. We're all sitting here. Let's answer the question at hand.
Right.
But you
Because
even also
I
in
think
that
the
ruling,
answer is obvious.
you even had Barrett. You think the answer is obvious? What do you think the answer is?
It's obvious that it's constitutional what Trump is doing with birthright citizenship. It's very obvious. I mean, I don't see how it's not.
Okay, I think it would do you a lot of favors to read the at least
14th Amendment?
I would say at least read Barrett's what Barrett wrote on that case. Even Barrett was hinting very heavily, like, hey, when this actual question does get to us, the question of whether or not he can use an executive order to get rid of a provision of the Constitution, like we're gonna rule against the government.
That's not what he's doing, though.
That's exactly what he's doing.
So what executive order? What was used? Like, for example, when Native Americans weren't given birthright citizenship, right? What did we do? What needed to pass to change that for them?
Native Americans still don't have birthright citizenship to this day.
What?
Native Americans are not, the part of the 14th Amendment that says, the jurisdiction thereof, like a part, about jurisdiction. Native Americans aren't a part of the jurisdiction of the federal government.
They get birthright citizenship.
The jurisdiction argument. Do you know? Are you like a jurisdiction guy? Like, are you one of the people that make that argument about the 14th Amendment? Do you make the jurisdiction argument?
Yeah, that's why
Okay.
on June 2nd, 1924, they passed the Indian Citizenship Act, right?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So you're making my point, and also you really just helped me with chat. You really just helped me with chat a lot. The 14th Amendment is not what gives. The 14th Amendment does not give Native Americans citizenship. They don't have birthright citizenship as it pertains to the 14th Amendment. We had to have a whole other fucking piece of legislation to give it to them because Native American land is a different jurisdiction. Just like embassies are. That's the reason, like, if you're like let's say you're the Russian ambassador to DC, right? And you're sitting in the Russian embassy in DC, and your wife is here, and you get her pregnant, and she has a kid. That kid doesn't get birthright citizenship because you're an ambassador, because you are not a part of our jurisdiction. You're still a part of the Russian jurisdiction. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the jurisdictional argument. But that's why I asked you if you're one of the people that make the jurisdictional argument, because the jurisdictional argument ends up turning on immigration. And I guess that's where we're going to have to go, right? I assume.
Right. That's what I was. That's why I was bringing up Native Americans, because they didn't believe they were under our jurisdiction. That's why they didn't get citizenship.
Because they're Native American tribal lands aren't. They're not a part. Like it's a different. It was literally for the longest time. I think. There's an incredible example of this. When Native Americans like rebelling against the government, right? If they were to do that, it wouldn't be considered. I need to find the source for this because it's an incredible example. I should just have it in my notes in case this question ever pops up again. It's not considered a rebellion; it's considered an invasion because their land is a different jurisdiction than the jurisdiction of the United States. Oh, it's a fucking dog! The door just started creaking. It was a damn dog. Okay. Anyway,
But that's my point, though. It's like if someone is under a jurisdiction, they're a citizen, right? And if they're not under
If
a
someone
jurisdiction,
is
they're
under our
not.
jurisdiction, they're a citizen. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, someone under a jurisdiction by
No,
definition is a citizen.
no, not by definition. No.
So would an outlaw be a citizen?
Well, the classic example against this is if somebody like from Canada, say you're a Canadian citizen, and you come here, you come to New York on vacation, and while you're here, you murder somebody. Like you will still be arrested and charged here, even though you're not a citizen of this country, but you're still under. When you come visit here, you're under the jurisdiction of the United States.
Right, but they're okay. That's the same with U.S. citizens, right? If a U.S. citizen goes overseas and commits a crime over there that's illegal in the
Yeah,
U.S.,
when you're on their when you're on like another person's land, you're subject to their jurisdiction. You have to follow their laws.
right, but U.S. citizens are still subject to U.S.
Yeah,
jurisdiction,
I mean, you're subject to
even
both.
when
Like
they're overseas.
our country can punish you. Like you can be punished for stuff you did elsewhere here too.
Exactly, right?
Sure.
Can illegal immigrants be punished for something they did somewhere else?
Can they be punished? So you have to repeat that. You cut out a little bit. Can they be
Can
what?
does like an illegal immigrant fall under the same standards? Like if they commit a crime overseas, are they also then under the jurisdiction in the U.S. and punishable in the U.S.?
They're under this jurisdiction of the U.S. while they're in the U.S.
Exactly. So they're different to a U.S. citizen, correct?
Did I ever say they were the exact same?
No. Therefore, exactly. Therefore, they don't shouldn't get birthright citizenship, correct?
Is that what the 14th Amendment says? If you're not subject to our jurisdiction at all points in time, no matter where you are, then you're not a citizen. Like what?
No, this is just proof that they're not subject to our jurisdiction.
They
This is
but they
proof that a
are. You just
citizen-
agreed that they are when they're
This is
on our
proof that a
when they're
citizen
on our
is subject to
soil
our
when they're
jurisdiction.
on our soil they're subject to our jurisdiction. Correct?
if they follow our laws.
If they follow our no, if they break our laws, they're also subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to punish them.
Yeah, we can't punish them because they're not subject to our laws. We don't have any of their information.
So if someone
so, for
illegally
example, hold on.
immigrates here
So,
from
Andrew,
Mexico and kills
hold on,
me, you don't
Andrew.
think they should be able to be
Yeah,
arrested and
so-
convicted of it?
So Andrew, yeah, that's exactly a great example. So say, and let's just make it less violent, right? Say you get into an accident with someone that's illegal, they don't have a license, they don't have any legal papers, and they just do a hit and run. They just hit your car, take off. How do you punish that person, Andrew?
Well, if you can find them, they're guilty of the crime of
If
hit and
you
run.
can find them.
You understand? It would be the exact same for a citizen too. Like if I go
No,
out and
a
get my
citizen
if
would
I
be
go,
much
stop,
easier
don't-
to find.
Stop. Let me just say
You
what I'm
can
going to say.
find a
Let me say
citizen.
what I'm going to say. Much easier to find. Really?
No, you can find them. That's
You
the thing.
can
It's
find an
possible.
illegal immigrant too.
Right, but it's not literally. They're literally not under our jurisdiction for that exact reason.
So they can't be punished.
They should be punished.
So every time we arrest an illegal,
Are they punished?
Didn't
No.
we bring Abrego Garcia back here from El Salvador to punish him under U.S. law?
No, he's getting deported
how the
again.
fuck can we do? He was indicted, correct? Yes or no? Was he indicted in America?
He's
In the U.S.
going to get deported again.
Yes or no? Was he indicted in the United States for federal crimes?
Yeah, he's under investigation. Yeah,
He's not under. He was indicted.
he's literally charged with human trafficking.
He was charged under U.S. federal law for federal crimes. Correct? Yes
Right.
or no? Okay.
Yes.
How in the fuck did we charge him with crimes under our U.S. code if he's not subject to our U.S. code?
Because again, he was an illegal immigrant.
He was an illegal immigrant.
He was, and then he was granted status to stay here.
He wasn't granted status. He was granted withholding of removal. You're still a
He
removable
had,
alien.
he had status to stay here in the U.S.
Withholding of removal isn't status to stay. You're still removable. You
He
just
had
can't
a
be
fear.
removed.
Okay, so did he have a fear screening? Yes or no?
He was granted withholding. I just told
Exactly.
you that.
So he went into the system, said, "Hey guys, I'm scared to go back. Here's my information. Please don't send me back." That's why he is now subject to our jurisdiction. That's why we now know who he is, where we find him, his name and stuff. If someone comes into our country, doesn't give us any of their information, doesn't have any legal documents with us, commits a crime and takes off, how the fuck would you find them, David? Or Andrew, sorry.
I'm not. We're not gonna. I just want to let you know, and I know this might be annoying to you, and that's fine. If it's annoying to you, I don't really actually give a fuck. We're not pivoting. We're staying on this topic because you're out of your fucking mind right now.
Wait, I'm not pivoting at all. We're still on the same topic.
No, we're not. What legal status did Abrego Garcia have?
Or withholding with removal.
Withholding of removal is not a legal status in the United States. If you're granted withholding of removal to El Salvador, you can still be removed to Venezuela, correct?
No, he couldn't be removed to Venezuela.
Yes, he could. Why? Well, I mean, I'm telling you, yes, he could, but I guess you tell me why not.
No, he couldn't be removed. He
Okay,
could
tell
be
me why.
removed to literally any other country except for that one because he had a fear screening about that.
He could be removed to any other country besides El Salvador.
My bad. Yeah, I thought you were.
So
confusing.
tell
I
me
thought it was
tell
Venezuela.
me why he couldn't have been removed to Canada if they were going to accept him.
Wait, tell me why they couldn't remove him to Canada?
Yeah, he was removable. He was yes or no, was Abrego Garcia a removable alien? Yes or no?
Yeah, to anywhere except for
Okay.
El Salvador.
So he didn't have any legal stat. He had no legal status here. He was still removable at all points in time. He was removable to any other country besides El Salvador.
It's literally called withholding of removal
To
status.
one country. To one.
That's his status, though.
That's not a legal status. We have green
It is.
cards. We have visas. We have like you could be a citizen. Those are all forms of legal
You
status.
could be applying for asylum. You could be withholding a removal status. You could have TPS.
If you're given asylum, tell me why asylum and withholding are different.
Because well, Roberto Garcia couldn't file for asylum because he was here for over a year.
Tell me why those two statuses are very different from each other.
Well, one is obviously one is like you come into the country within the last year and you apply for asylum, and then
That's not why at all. If you're granted asylum,
wait, you're pivoting though. You're pivoting to
I'm still trying to get you to understand why under your logic, Abrego Garcia shouldn't be chargeable in the U.S., but he is because he actually is he is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
I told you why he can be charged.
No, you didn't. You told me why you think, but you're wrong, and I'm trying to walk you down the line.
Because he went into our system,
Again,
tried to come.
You can keep saying it. You can repeat it over and over and over and over. The amount of repeats that you do doesn't actually matter at all.
Okay, just answer very simply. Did Abrego Garcia try to do it the legal way?
When? At what point?
Once he was afraid to go back to El Salvador, did he try to stay here the legal way?
No.
No, so he didn't have a fear screening interview?
He didn't. He applied for withholding defensively, like a decade.
And that requires an interview about credible fear as to why you can't be deported. They interviewed him. He said, this is why you don't want to go back. Barrio 18.
The first decade he was here the first decade he was here, the first like 10 years of him being in the country, prior to him filing for withholding of removal. Do you think at those first 10 years he wasn't chargeable under any of our laws? Like if he had robbed a store, we couldn't have charged him with like theft?
You could charge him if you find him, get his information, and verify that it's the right information.
So he would have been subject to our jurisdiction.
We have to literally catch these people and then verify their information with their home country, cooperating with them so that we know who these people are. And the majority of the time, they get sent back to their home country. They don't get charged here. That's what happens. They get deported.
Sure.
Yes or no? Is that not what happens?
Oh boy, I'm gonna struggle with getting this word out of my mouth. Prosecutorial discretion. A prosecutor could charge him with whatever crime if they wanted to, but if it's easier to just deport the person, then they just will because it's easier.
Right, but I mean the answer is obvious. The reason I think Abrego Garcia was able to be charged is because he had a withholding or removal. He went into our system. He tried to stay here legally through like the withholding or removal, arguing he was afraid to go back to El Salvador. That's why we know who he is. That's why he's being charged.
The reason he's being charged is because the alleged crimes occurred inside of America. That's the actual reason.
Well, obviously, the U.S. isn't going to charge him for crimes he did somewhere else because he's not a U.S. citizen.
So when he did those things that are alleged of him, when those things occurred, he was subject to our jurisdiction, correct?
Yes, because he then had gone into our system and had the status
I'm willing to be corrected here, but I'm almost positive the things he's alleged, that are alleged of him in the indictment are things that occurred pre his withholding claim.
No, I'm pretty sure I can fact check it, but I'm pretty sure it was after.
Okay. Either way, I'm so confused how you've arrived at the position that if you're like illegal immigrants aren't subject to the U.S.'s jurisdiction, necessarily that would mean that if any of them commit crimes,
I've literally experienced it. The example I just gave you happened to me. I got into an accident with someone. They did a hit and run. I had to cover all the charges. The insurance couldn't find him.
Right. None of what
you're
saying matters. It doesn't fucking matter. I don't understand how my
literally fucking shows they're not subject to our jurisdiction, dude, because they're illegal. We don't know who the fuck they are. They have no documents. They're literally
sir, are you just not aware what jurisdiction is? Is that what's happening? You just don't know what jurisdiction is, I think, maybe? Is that what's going on?
So what would you consider someone being under? How would you consider we know someone's under jurisdiction?
If we have legal authority over them.
Exactly.
You do have legal authority over an illegal immigrant that gets into hit run with you. If they run away, then they ran away. If you catch them, sure. But you can sue that person if you find them. And the cops can arrest them because it's a criminal offense. Hit and runs are criminal, right? So they can be arrested and convicted of a hit and run if you get a hold of them.
And again, it doesn't happen because they are ghosts. They don't have any fucking.
That doesn't change whether or not we have legal authority over them. Whether or not you can find them has no bearing on whether you have legal authority over them. Right,
so then you're arguing that these people should be granted citizenship, right?
No, not in all cases. No. That's not what birthright citizenship is. Their kids would have citizenship, not them.
Exactly. You think their kids should have citizenship. You think women should be incentivized to come here pregnant.
I mean, if you just use your eyeballs and read through the 14th Amendment, the first line, yes, that's very clearly lays out.
Right. Also, very clearly lays out that you be subject to our jurisdiction.
And just subject to our jurisdiction, as in As in what? Come on, say it. I know you have it in you. As in, we have legal authority over them, right? Okay, he cut out. He's gone. Okay, now he really cut out. Jesus Christ. Okay. He cut out. Listen, if you're in the live right now and you're not following me, click the follow button. Also, we are at 52 out of 400 on the rose goal. So if you have extra coins sitting in your fucking TikTok wallet and you want to send some roses, I would be ultra appreciative. I was about to the next thing I was going to do was just read him the 14th Amendment line for line. Like we were about to just read the 14th Amendment together. Fuck it. Let's do it anyway. Let's read it together, guys. Here's what let's read it together. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. All people born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Oh my God, what could that possibly mean? Could it possibly mean that if you're born here and we have legal authority over you, then you're a citizen? Wow. Anyway. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and if you're still here at the end, you must have either really liked the content or you are a very dedicated hate watcher. Either way, please like, comment, and subscribe to appease the algorithm overlords. And I'd like to give a super special thank you to my YouTube channel members and TikTok and Twitch subscribers right over here. If you'd like to become a channel member, you can click the join button down below and gain access to a special role in my Discord server, the ability to watch these YouTube videos up to a week early, and have your name shouted out at the end of videos like this. Becoming a YouTube member or subscribing on TikTok or Twitch is the best possible way to support me directly, and I deeply appreciate each and every single one of you that chooses to do so. Anyway, thank you all for being here. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your day.